Hello and welcome to ModB.com's Stanislaus Football Weekly, an inside look at all things football in the Modesto area. And now for your hosts, Joe Cortez and Brian VanderBeek.
Hi everyone and welcome to our third edition of Stanislaus Football Weekly. I'm Brian VanderBeek, this is Joe Cortez, and we'll get right into last week's games. Although, I do have to say, it's week 3 of the season. After the 0 week, we always get that confused.
Right.
This is probably the last week, or for most of our teams, this is the last week of non-league play. So let's talk a little bit about last week's games first, starting with the game you saw, Central Catholic and McClymonds in the rematch of the NorCal D4 final.
Right. McClymonds, very speedy team.
Right.
Very athletic. They brought in Levon Washington, who was committed to play at Washington, Pac-12 school. They brought in Levance Warren, a junior, who's probably the fastest player I'll see this year. Wonderful athlete. But ultimately, Central's running game was just too much. Too much Matt Ringer. Kid carried 40 times, Beek.
Yeah.
40.
Like John McKay said, it's not heavy.
Yeah, that's what Roger Canepa said.
Yeah.
It only weighs about a pound, and Ringer's in shape. But he carried 40 times for 272 yards, 4 touchdowns, and was the difference in the game.
Yeah, I was at the game, the Modesto Christian Calaveras game over in Salida. Surprised on 2 counts. One, that it was so lopsided, and that I think the second part, I expected more from Calaveras. Now, Jason Weatherby, the Calaveras coach, said was very disappointed in his team's performance, say they didn't play that well. I think they thought they were going to be able to go in and wear Modesto Christian down, because Modesto Christian only dresses 20 and plays about 17, but that wasn't the case. As a matter of fact, Modesto Christian, their speed advantage, I think, made Calaveras wear down. That ended up 51-15, and just
it was close early though.
It was close early, and Modesto Christian scored 2 touchdowns. Got 2 touchdown passes from Anthony Brooks in a 51-second span late in the first half to make it 28-7 at halftime. And after that, Calaveras, which can't really throw the ball, had no way to come up.
Like Steve Gleason said at the quarterback club on Monday. He's got 20 players, but all 20 play.
Yeah,
so
that's exactly right. And this week, Modesto Christian has East Union, a team they should be able to handle. And then it's right into the fire next week with the TVL opener against Hillmar, which is going to be a very, very interesting game.
Indeed, but they're living on the edge with 20 players.
Yes.
I mean, they're just an injury away from calamity.
Well, and even talk about that, even the JV team is even worse shape. The JV team only dressed 14 for its game against Calaveras, and 2 kids got hurt. One had a separated shoulder, and the other had a head injury, and he appears to be fine. He was moving on the field before they took him off. But they could dress 12 players on their JV team this week. And you wanted to talk a little bit about what might be our wildest game of the season.
Yeah. Sierra, 61-58 over Chavez of Stockton. Sierra took the final drive of the game, chewed up the last 5 minutes of the clock, and it ended with a 20-yard field goal from Josh Gonzalez. And but the big story I thought out of that game was Jake Pruitt completing 35 of 45 passes.
Wow.
For 400 yards, 6 TDs, no interceptions. And, it's not like he completed a 95-yarder,
right?
And padded his stats. His longest completion of the night was 30 yards, 32, I think. So, he was really, to quote Hank Stram, matriculating the ball down the field.
Yeah, good ball control passing game, which you don't see a lot around here.
But even so, they still had a 100-yard rusher. Reed Maestas had 129 yards rushing.
Wow, that's
a lot of offense there.
A lot of offense. And a lot of offense, too, at the crosstown rivalry. They play for the Mayor's Cup, or the Ripon Christian game. And this one played out, as I mentioned last week, I thought it would, that Ripon would score a lot of points and win by a wide margin. But Ripon Christian would score to break Ripon's 2-week not scored upon streak. Some interesting stats coming from Michael Isaac. 493 yards and 7 touchdowns over the first 3 weeks of the season, averaging 21.4 yards a carry. Now, Ripon has Lathrop this week, and as a team too. They're averaging 10.2 yards per carry as a team.
That's a first down every time they run the ball.
First down every time they touch the ball.
Why would they do anything else?
I guess, but they can throw the ball too. They get Lathrop this week before they go into the first week of TVL play. And you wanted to talk a little bit about Enox and how Enox might be in a precarious situation.
Well, we have talked a lot about Enox, and I've written about Enox and the 2 players they lost this summer, and it's a very emotional time for that team. but they've played Pittman, they've played Buhack Colony, and they played Turlock.
Right.
Or they played Turlock, and they've lost all 3 convincingly. And they get Merced this week, and it could be more of the same. It's a real tough situation. They're getting beat, and they're getting beat handily, and it kind of could careen out of control for them here.
Yeah, what's difficult for them? I mean, they took on probably one of the more ambitious schedules of any team in our area.
True.
And it's not paying off for them, but it could pay off if emotionally they can come through this week's game. They get Turlock this week. If they come through this week's game against Turlock, is that a Thursday night game? That's not a Thursday night game. If they come through this week, they'll have all this tough play behind them, and it certainly will prepare them very well for MMC play.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, let's look ahead now at this week's games. We have 2 games on Thursday, starting with the Grigori at Liberty Ranch game up in Galt.
Yeah, the Jags came through with a real gutty performance the other night. They were down 12-7, and things were not going their way. They went their way early. Things went their way early, and then it just kind of got out of control. But they hung tough. They battled back, and they got a fourth-quarter touchdown from Alex Labanon. And it was interesting. The real star of that game, perhaps, was the kicker. Grigori had been fiddling around in the shadow of their own goalpost all night.
Yeah.
And they were sacked for a safety. Tanner Godot was sacked for a safety. And the kicker, Brendan Crimmen, had to kick off, kicked an 80-yarder into the end zone for a touchback. It completely flipped the field and changed the momentum of the game. So you could just sense then that was a turning point.
Yeah.
And they were able to pull it out.
Yeah, another game we have on Thursday is the Modesto at Turlock game. And, growing up, my dad used to talk about this game. They used to always go have Thanksgiving dinner around this game, even though he had no ties to Modesto or Turlock. That was something that people did in the area, go to the Turkey Bowl. Well, it's not the Turkey Bowl anymore, and obviously we're playing it in September this year again. So Turlock, though, is 3-0, and, those matchups in the CCC, Turlock, Pittman, and Merced, are just going to be barn burners this year. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Yeah. Modesto is 2-1. But I saw them play last week against Pittman, and not really competitive there. They lost 63-12, and Pittman could have done a lot more than that. They actually took a knee in the first half with 29. They were deep in Modesto territory. 29 seconds left in the first half, and they took a knee. They didn't want to score any more than that. It was, I want to say, 49-6 at halftime of that game. But again, I mean, this has lost its luster, but it's still a good measuring stick for Modesto as they're playing these tough foes, taking on this schedule heading into MMC play.
Sure.
Let's go to some games we have Friday, too. Downey at Central in a rematch of maybe the turning point of the season last year for Central.
Maybe our game of the year.
Yeah.
Last year, our regular season game of the year. Downey won that game 45-42, but they had Aaron Zwollen.
Yes.
Who has since graduated and will eventually play at the University of Hawaii. And Central did not have Ray Vega at that point in the season. He was sitting out for his interdistrict transfer. But I think this is going to be a good game. Downey got beat a couple of weeks ago by Merced. They bounced back last week with a big win. They're going to get quarterback P.J. Wilson back. He separated his shoulder in that Merced game. He'll be back. Logan Cody has done a nice job in his place. It remains to be seen who will get the start, but it gives Jeremy Plough some options. Yeah,
we have another measuring stick game, one that's become a measuring stick for both teams involved in the last few years, and that's Escalon at Patterson in a game I think I'm going to Friday night. I get to go to that. That's always fun to go to Patterson. Beautiful, beautiful stadium there. One thing I want to point out about the small schools this year, especially the TVL, we have Escalon at 2-1, Houston's very good, Rippon's very good, Hilmar's very good. The TVL right now is 14-6 as a league, and that even includes Orostimba at 0-3. So take Orostimba out of the equation, and the remaining 5 teams right now are 14-3. The WAC's no slouch at all. They have series at 0-3, but they're 12-9. And they've been playing up. This is going to be a very, very interesting game. Escalon, you go to a game at Escalon, and depending on how fast the opposing team is, the grass seems to get a little bit longer at Escalon. They'd like to grow that grass long, but there'll be no such effect here since they'll be playing on the turf over in Patterson. And let's go right into our picks for this week. Let's start with Downey at Central. How do you see that one?
Well, as we mentioned, no Aaron Swallen.
Yeah.
I like Central in this one. I think Central's going to be able to run. I know they're fired up about this. Offensive coordinator Leroy Rocha said as much at the quarterback club meeting Monday. He hopes his players remember last year. I'm sure they do. They'll get a big dose of ringer.
Yes.
And I think that's going to be the difference. The CC running game is pretty powerful.
Well, the revenge is the worst motivator out there, but I do like Central in this game also for the same reasons. I think they're going to be able to run the ball.
Yeah.
And eventually there's going to be a game or two down the stretch when they might have to pass the ball, and they're going to have to get better at that, but not right now, and not through the first couple of weeks of the WAC season. Escalon at Patterson, and I'll go ahead and pick this one first. And I'm just going to go with Escalon about this. Escalon in this game. Escalon has beaten Pacheco and Linden in addition to the game against Los Banos, while Patterson has beaten Johansson, Kimball, and Davis. So you just look at that. Escalon is facing its toughest opponent of the season in Patterson, and vice versa. That's what makes this game interesting. Two really good teams with solid records so far, but it's the best test of the season for both games. That's exactly what makes this interesting. But I'm going with Escalon in this one.
I'm going to go with Escalon as well. I just think that Mark Lorero really does some of his best work in games like these, and I think it's the Cougars.
Okay, Paraclete at Oakdale. Now, the last time Oakdale at 0-2, I can't see just Oakdale being 0-3, and for that reason alone, I'm going to pick Oakdale. I don't care who they're playing against. I just don't see them going 0-3. The last time they went 0-2 was 2008, and they ended up running the table in the Valley Oak League that year.
And that's what Trent Merzon says. That's what he preaches. He wants to play a tough early season schedule, get his team ready for VOL titles and section titles, and they can still do that. Maybe the NorCal bid and a state bowl might be out of the question at this point with going 0-2, but the TVL and section title are still certainly in play. I'm going to go with Oakdale. It's a long trip from Lancaster, and like I said, Oakdale has just barely lost to two really good teams.
Yeah. Sonora at Calaveras. Now, this is an interesting game because next year this becomes a league game in the Mother Lode League, but meeting as non-conference foes for the last time in a while. How do you look at this game?
Well, I picked Calaveras to beat Modesto Christian.
Yes, you did.
So I like Calaveras. I saw Calaveras scrimmage this year over at Central Catholic against CC and Buhack Colony, and I really liked the way they played that day.
Yeah.
But boy, coming off their showing against Modesto Christian, I'm going to go with Sonora.
Yeah, for that same reason, I'm going to go with Sonora. Calaveras just really didn't have much. They didn't throw the ball well. They used two quarterbacks, and they were combined 5 for 16 with 6 interceptions. They just threw a lot of balls up for grabs, and Modesto Christian probably more athletic in the defensive backfield than Sonora is, and they were able to take advantage of that. But I still see Sonora pulling this one out. And our last pick of the week, Bayer at Atwater. That's a toss-up. That's two teams in interesting positions.
Yeah. I really like what Bill Flesher has done at Bayer, but I think I'm going to go with Atwater in this game. They're coming off an 82 to 6 blitzing of Roosevelt.
Yeah.
Roosevelt can't be very good, but anytime a team scores 82, I think the belief factor starts to go through the roof. They're going to be primed, and they're playing at Falcon Field.
That's the main thing for me too. They're playing at Falcon Field. They're the home game, coming off, like you said, a big number of points scored. They're going to be confident. They're going to be looking to. If you're Atwater, you need this win too to get your name up among the Turlocks and Pittmans and Merceds in the CCC. So I'm going with Atwater on that one. Anything else?
Jaquan Gardner.
Okay.
Got 139 yards. He's still on pace to break Lewis Bland's all-time district rushing record.
Well, we're going to keep looking at that as the season goes on. And a lot of home games. Like we said, this is the last week for non-conference games for most of our teams. We start league play next week. And a lot of games out there. So for Joe Cortez, I'm Brian VanderBeek. And go out there and have a great football weekend.